Hello and welcome to the African Tech Roundup, episode 54 for the week ending Monday, April 25th, 2016. This is where we round up the week's most important tech, digital, and innovation news from across the African continent. My name is Andile Masubu, and back with me on the show after a week away is my main man, Defo Mogape. How's it, man?
All good, man.
Nice to have you back.
Yeah, I heard the celebrations continued last week as well.
Hey, the fireworks were going off. It was all gravy, man.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, it's been a year. It's worth celebrating a couple of times.
Indeed. Thank you all for listening in and letting us do that 2 episodes in a row. In case you're joining us for the first time, or if you missed the last 2 of our birthday celebration episodes, please do head straight to africantechroundup.com to get yourself up to speed.
And we love engaging with all you guys on social media, so keep your comments and shout-outs coming in on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is @AfricanRoundup on both networks. That's @AfricanRoundup. And you can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/African Tech Roundup.
That's right. But before we get on with the show, this episode of the African Tech Roundup is brought to you by FreshBooks. For you, the listeners of the African Tech Roundup, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day free trial to give you the opportunity to try out their service. Now, FreshBooks is easy-to-use invoicing software designed to help freelancers and small business owners get organized and save time invoicing so they can get paid faster. If that sounds good to you, just go to gofreshbooks.com/African Tech and put them to the test. Now, with all that said, in today's discussion, we'll be asking the question, what technological innovation is needed most on the African continent? Now, stick around to hear Defo and I chat about that. But for now, it's straight into this week's news. First up, how's this for desperate or determined, depending how you look at it? The FBI paid a third-party hacker $1.3 million to unlock the infamous San Bernardino shooter Syed Farouk's iPhone. They're spending like African governments now.
Actually interesting that you mention African governments, because although this is not an African story, it sort of sheds light on what we can expect our governments to be paying to snoop on people they don't like.
Determined or desperate, do you think?
Thin line.
And then how worrying is it that the FBI is going to third parties? Who's to say these third parties aren't going to happily service some other government with the same information?
Look, it's probably happening. I mean, you remember again the story of hacking teams. So they contract to the National Security Agency and all sorts of governments across the continent. So actually, they're being nice by telling us how much they paid. I just wonder how many other people like this they pay to do this.
Does that amount say something about how brilliantly Apple has secured its platform in that it should cost far less to do? Or are these hackers just, smiling all the way to the bank and taking advantage of the FBI being so desperate?
I think it's probably more to do with how much that unlocking was worth to the FBI and how much the hackers saw that if we unlock this iPhone, we're probably helping them unlock infinitely more others running the same operating system. So probably the hackers looked at it and said, we're not just unlocking this iPhone, we're giving you code to unlock all sorts of iPhones. So how much is it worth to you? And yeah.
And by your estimation, is this something that could happen like in an afternoon, one clever chap on a weekend or something?
I don't know what was involved in unlocking. So I'm imagining it was encryption involved, but I think it was more than just encryption. So
be interesting to know how they did it. And of course, I think I read somewhere this week that the FBI won't be telling Apple how they did it, which, I suppose they're just getting back at Apple for not sharing the information in the first place. Cost them $1.3 million. Apple's probably one step ahead of them anyway.
Probably a bad move by Tim Cook. I think he thought that by going public and telling people that they're going against the FBI, and now it's backfired. The FBI has unlocked the phone. Everybody knows they've unlocked the phone. Again, I still think when we first covered it, they should have done this behind closed doors.
I don't know if it's necessarily bad in terms of Tim Cook. I think he and his organization actually walk away from this with their integrity intact.
They do publicly, but now it's opened all sorts of doors. Like on the continent, governments like your Ugandas who cut off cell phone coverage during elections, and the DRC as well, the Republic of Congo as well, are looking at this thinking $1.3 million. That's chump change.
Yeah, that's like a little bit of child labor, some platinum out of a mine. Goodness, we could get this done.
Yeah, with anybody. I mean, with opposition they don't like. So I don't think they should have gone public with this bet.
Yeah, I see your point. Well, to Zambia next, though, where lawmakers are proposing that the government not charge value-added tax on mobile devices imported into the country. Now, this recommendation is no doubt motivated by the misguided belief that mobile devices will somehow save the developing world. I mean, I suppose we'll talk about this a little bit more a little later on, but what do you think?
I don't see how, because they're saying the reason for this was that they want to increase internet penetration in Zambia, which stands at approximately 17%. It's a really far-fetched argument to say that by dropping value-added tax on mobile device imports will increase internet penetration.
Yeah, I'm sure the lobbyists on behalf of device makers are just rubbing their hands with glee. If this goes through, they're probably due for some serious commissions. And of course, the mobile telcos would love this as well because, you know, they could obviously improve their margins, cheaper phones, tax-free. I'm just annoyed that this kind of thinking is probably driven by, you know, the thinking that somehow Africa would just be all better off if all of us had a mobile device.
True that, and if you want internet penetration to increase, your best bet is to take that value-added tax that's being paid on mobile devices and give people free internet.
Absolutely. Or education to start. I mean, what can you do if you don't know how to write or read or count for that matter?
True. This smells of politics and politricks of people lobbying each other, as you said. So yeah, I don't. It's a really I can see how it indirectly impacts internet penetration, but it's really far-fetched.
I'm willing to be convinced. If you all out there have information that can prove the correlation between dropping the price of mobile devices and the increase in internet penetration, then we'd like to see it. The way we see it right now, it's big business that stands to benefit.
Yeah, and mobile phones come at different prices, so I don't see how dropping VAT will affect. If you can't afford an iPhone 6, you go buy a cheap Android phone that comes in at what, $25, $30?
And that's essentially robbing the public, because I mean that's money that would have made its way into the fiscus and benefited the country as a whole in terms of building infrastructure and other things. I can't see how that could possibly be a good thing. Again, we're willing to be convinced. If you have an argument that might change our minds, give us a shout on Twitter at African Roundup or drop us an email at hello@africantechroundup.com. Well, it's good news if you live in one of the 3 counties in Kenya where the government is promising to provide free public Wi-Fi via fiber optic cable.
This is good. You see, this is how you get internet penetration up, giving people free Wi-Fi.
Incidentally, Kenya is one of the countries that the Zambian government pointed out as an innovator to catch because of their penetration numbers that Zambia is obviously looking to emulate. And it's interesting that they're going about it very differently.
Again, you were asking our listeners to give you correlation between dropping VAT on mobile devices and internet penetration increasing. The only way you increase internet penetration is free public Wi-Fi. And also, I think the Zambian government are sugarcoating the whole thing. I think this benefits the device manufacturers. And yeah, but let's focus on Kenya for now. The
other thing I like about the story coming out of Kenya is the focus on public-private partnerships and the realization that it's not just government that can do this alone. The private sector is going to need to come to the party. The benefit is likely to rub both ways.
It will. The private sector or the people laying out the fiber cables will benefit. I'm sure government is paying them some sort of fee or retainer or service fee or installation fees, etc. And government benefits because it's providing citizens with free Wi-Fi and they look good to citizens.
That's how you do it, Zambia. Tear a leaf out of Kenya's book. That's what you do. Now, staying with Kenya, though, mobile telco Safaricom is set to continue its dominance in the Kenyan market. This is in the wake of the most recent delay in enacting a law that would seek to prevent big business like Safaricom from benefiting from manipulating the free market to maintain anti-competitive advantages. The likes of Airtel have long said that Safaricom enjoys far too much anti-competitive advantage in the mobile telco sector.
Yes, I mean, Safaricom dominates Kenya as it is currently, and that's true, but it's odd that the expression of interest only received 1 bid. And according to Francis Wangusi, the Director General for Communications Authority, it's non-competitive, and I agree with him.
The expression of interest was to tender for international consultancy on the behalf of the authority to figure out how to determine whether the landscape in any given industry is actually fair or not. And once it's identified those parameters, be able to identify which players within each industry might be declared a dominant player which needs to be curbed.
And as it is, given that the bid is non-competitive and will probably be delayed again, Safaricom continue to enjoy their dominance without being questioned.
However, I want to ask a question. Any good capitalist would tell you this is exactly what should be happening. It's a free market. Safaricom is dominating on merit. The consumers are choosing Safaricom ahead of all its competitors because the market is free, and Safaricom presumably is providing a service at a level that beats its competitors. What could possibly be wrong with that, and why should the government be involved? Isn't that what should be avoided at all costs? This is me speaking for the capitalists out there.
Only if it wasn't one, I think, in my opinion, a regulated industry. Telco is a regulated industry. Two, only if government wasn't involved in Safaricom as a shareholder in one way or another.
Oh, I see. Okay, so the politics of it, and of course, it being an industry that exists for the public good, it means that it needs to be regulated, and the government ought to have a say about who gets to benefit to what extent.
Yes, so in that case, you can't allow dominance by one player.
Okay, well, the social capitalist in me has been satisfied by your response.
I'm glad.
Well, moving on to our next story, and it comes out of Egypt, where the government there is aiming to have 2 new tech parks up and running by the end of 2016. Wow. Our Northern African brothers are not messing around.
Yeah, it's interesting. These sound like innovation hubs, I guess.
Yes, and look, we did a show many weeks ago, I think probably 2 or 3 weeks into the existence of the African Tech Roundup, where we questioned the efficacy of such hubs. Should we be questioning the efficacy of these hubs, especially them being government run? Do you think the fundamentals of their existence would be sound? Is this kind of news the kind of news that gets you excited, basically?
It gets a reluctant smile from me because I still believe there isn't a model that for the continent. I'm not talking about Silicon Valley and Europe and Asia. I'm talking specifically for most of the continent. A model that works for hubs. I don't think one has been found. An investment model from a VC side, from seed and angel, has been sort of found. But in terms of innovation hubs, I don't think we've nailed down a model yet that works for both the hubs or the private sector or the government if they're involved.
Well, these 2 hubs, one called the Borg El Arab Technology Park and the other called the New Aslut Technology Park, both in Alexandria, are being created to, quote, help attract young entrepreneurs and innovators in the ICT fields and help export ICT services to the world markets. I mean, it sounds lovely, doesn't it?
It does. They always do. But how effective are they?
That we know for a fact that hubs all across the continent are being closed at an unprecedented rate.
And the latest trend now is hubs run by corporates, like big corporates, big banks or big companies.
Yes. Actually, with the help of the likes of certain VC interests like Nest, who tend to like to partner with corporates, provide all the expertise that the banks don't have, but leverage all the services and the network that perhaps the banks can bring on board. And of course, everyone gets to win.
Yep. But again, I mean, I think I was reading an article last week which was questioning whether any innovation was coming out of such hubs.
Look, I suppose on the one hand, we are very quick to criticize big business for not being innovative and not being on the ball in terms of trying their best to innovate from the inside out. Some companies have just decided that's not even what they're going to try and do. They're just going to buy it in. I think it's really difficult. I have to feel for corporate leadership because if I were in their shoes, I wouldn't quite know what to do in order to try and keep up and be sure that I'm doing what's necessary for this organization to last into the next, decade.
Yeah, so far it seems what works though is acquisitions, as you said, either acquiring startups or acquiring a portion of startups that are innovating within your space. But the hub model, the incubator model, I'm yet to see something successful come out of both the public-private hubs run by government and the private sector and hubs run solely by big corporate. Innovations that were started within that hub and not acquired.
I have to admit that culturally, the business context of a place like Alexandria it was probably vastly different to what we experience here in the rest of sub-Saharan Africa. And listen, if you're in Egypt listening to us and you have some insights that will give us an indication of how hubs work or don't in your context, please give us a shout. You know where it's at African Roundup on Twitter. Now, finally, the government in Malawi is doing some incredibly innovative stuff around the testing of drones to help improve turnaround times on HIV testing for infants in rural parts of the country. Exciting stuff. Now, this I dig.
I dig this, but again, I think we did this with an episode where we had Chinedu Marek-Zmyslowski about drone deliveries in Nigeria. The question becomes the addressing system in Malawi.
Well, no, in this case, the drones are being flown to clinics where expecting mothers and mothers who have recently given birth are in a position to have their children tested for HIV or themselves tested for HIV. The turnaround process, which can take up to 2 months under normal circumstances, especially in areas that are hard to reach by motorcycle, often only by motorcycle. And now it's becoming possible for these clinics to collect these samples and then send them back to labs for testing, get the information back to the mothers so they can decide whether or not they need to be on retroviral drugs or put their children on prophylaxis.
Now that makes sense. I mean, if they're localizing the delivery and bringing it to the clinic, that makes good sense.
Yeah, look, I mean, they're very costly little devices, roughly about 7,000 Rand a pop. But the advantages of that, the batteries don't need to be charged as often as you might think. And over the long term, their use becomes cheaper than the use of diesel fueled motorbikes. I imagine also more reliable. I can imagine places a motorcyclist on his way to go collect a sample might end up that a drone perhaps might not.
Yeah, definitely. And it's more a direct route with a drone because there's no obstacles in there.
Yeah, I'm digging this. Now, I mean, this leads very nicely into our discussion question for the week, which is what technological innovation is most needed on the African continent? Is it drone delivered HIV testing kits? Is it tax-free mobile devices? Is it free Wi-Fi? Is it water purification? More Uberization of just about anything? What would you say?
Let's start with free internet. I think that will help in terms of. I think that helps in terms of education and information systems as an innovation. So you can think about people in distant areas not having access to information similar to HIV tests and not knowing where to go or how to go about getting the HIV test or where the nearest clinic is. So giving them free internet can help in that sense. So I think but the more fancier stuff, and tax-free import on devices, I'm not too sure about that.
You know what I'm excited about is the world-leading HIV vaccine trials that are happening in South Africa and Zimbabwe at the moment. I think that's incredibly exciting. And on the surface, I guess it doesn't seem like too much tech is involved, but the volume of data crunching that's required in order to make discoveries like an HIV vaccine is quite incredible. And I feel that a lot of the sort of brains trust on the continent that could be applying themselves to solutions like that are very busy now programming the next Uber competitor instead of sort of getting down deep. And this is easy for me to say because I'm not technically a tech dude. But I mean, I don't know. Am I right to say that we don't have enough people excited about stuff that I feel would matter?
There's plenty of people excited again, but you bring up an interesting point. It's a matter of balancing. They need to eat.
That's true. I suppose donating your time to a non-profit data drive in order to crunch data on HIV and disease studies isn't necessarily going to pay the bills.
It might not in the short term or even in the medium term. And also, I mean, we just don't have investors with the appetite that you see in Silicon Valley or other parts of the world who are willing to throw money at projects and wait for years on end without any profit, but seeing growth.
And I mean, we've already touched on it earlier on, but this idea that if every single individual on the continent had access to the internet, somehow it would make for a better continent. Is that sound thinking to think that way?
It's more marketing than anything, but free internet or widespread internet access at either low costs or free does have an impact on the continent, I think, in terms of, one, I mentioned information services. There's information services like mothers who just given birth who live far away from things like clinics. Instead of when they feel ill or they see certain signs on the baby that they don't know what's going on, they can just USSD or beside and say, my baby has these symptoms, what's wrong? Then you get answers. So things like that do help, but to stretch it and say it will make a sweeping statement saying that the continent will be far better with free internet, stretching it a bit.
And then let me turn the initial question around and say, which quote unquote technological innovations are most overrated on the African continent, do you think?
Apps.
A news story that we didn't touch on is the rumor that Easy Taxi is calling it quits here on the continent. Listen, we haven't had anything confirmed. But another one bites the dust in terms of what you just said, apps.
Yeah, apps are highly overrated, yet we see hackathons about apps week in, week out.
I'd have to agree with you on that. So absolutely overrated. Apps are most needed, in my view, research contributing to an HIV vaccine. And you, remind me?
Free internet. I still believe it can make an impact, but not as widespread as some people make it out to be, saying that it's going to change everything. But you can think of, I can think of many use cases for free internet in a remote area where there's no school yet, but there's a public library or something of the sort doing remote teaching on high-speed internet. So sharing teachers, maybe there aren't that many good maths teachers or science teachers. So whilst the good school is having a lesson from one of the best teachers, it can be streamed at the same time to a remote school somewhere else. So I'm not talking by free internet, I'm not talking apps here. I'm talking like real use cases, education, or even medical help.
Well, that was very eloquently put. My motivation for wanting an HIV vaccine is quite simple. I just would like to see a lot more of my African brothers and sisters not die.
True. And we need more research.
Absolutely. Well, what technological innovation do you think is needed most on the African continent? And in the same breath, which innovation do you reckon is most overrated? Tell us what you think. Give us a shout on Twitter at African Roundup, or you can drop us an email at hello@africantechroundup.com. We always love hearing from you. Keep your comments coming. Once again, this episode of the African Tech Roundup is brought to you by FreshBooks. For you, the esteemed listeners of the African Tech Roundup, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day free trial to give you the opportunity to try out their service. Now, like we said earlier, FreshBooks is an easy-to-use invoicing software designed to help freelancers and small business owners get organized and save time invoicing so they can get paid faster. Now, don't take our word for it. Go try it out for free at gofreshbooks.com/African Tech. That's gofreshbooks.com/African Tech.
And that's it for this week, guys. If you missed the last two episodes of the show where we were celebrating our 1-year anniversary, be sure to check them out because we took a fun trip down memory lane by revisiting some of the best moments we had on the African Tech Roundup and our sister podcast, African Tech Conversation. Check them both out at africantechroundup.com. That's africantechroundup.com and conversations.africantechroundup.com.
Also be sure to listen in again next week. In the meantime, though, it's cheers from me, Andile Masugu, and
Tefo Mohapi.
Thanks for listening, y'all. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.